The views and opinions expressed by this program's hosts, guests, listeners, and viewers are solely the views and opinions of the original source who expresses them. They do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of TV5 Network Incorporated, its subsidiaries and affiliates, and their respective stockholders, directors, officers, and employees.
Sounding off from Los Angeles, the undisputed king of podcasting, who's all about the good times, Mo Twister. Representing New York City, a social media monster and co-creator of the Not Bill Walton Twitter feed, Chris Savage. All the way from Sydney, Australia, a basketball media veteran and unapologetic cultural critic, Bradford Graham. Holding it down from Manila, a seasoned sportscaster with the studio skills to pay the bills, Gino Rufino. This is Full Court Report.
All right, welcome to the Full Court Report. It is a brand new episode of our show. We are four guys in four different cities, of course, joined together to talk NBA basketball. My name is Mo. I'm in Los Angeles. We have Chris over there in New York City. Brad is in Oklahoma City, and Gino Rufino over there in Metro Manila in studio. So, Brad, since you're in OKC, of course, huge game last night. Everybody was talking about it. Why don't you go first with 12 minutes on the clock for your quarter? Fire away.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. I guess I'm in my little home away from home here, Oklahoma City, and as we all saw, the entire basketball world descended on, Thunder territory over the weekend. Steph Curry and the Warriors came into town and faced to be what I believe will become their toughest opponent, standing between them and the 2016 championship. And I guess everyone else got to see sort of a real, standout performance from the Thunder. I think they really gave the Warriors their best shot. It's going to go down as probably one of the games of the season, game that went into overtime. We can get into sort of, the nitty-gritty of it all in just a minute. I'm sure this game is going to be dissected a number of ways, not only this show, but I guess in media across the world. But the contest sort of really did have it all. And rather than give you sort of a 6-minute diatribe here, what I really want to do is I really want to get your takeaways. I mean, I was here, I was inside the arena, I heard a bunch of stuff, I saw a bunch of stuff, but how did it look from TV land? Like, how did you guys see this Thunder team perform against the defending champs?
I was listening to the game on the radio until about, I think, the Warriors were making a comeback in the fourth, and I kind of just got to my television right away, drove back and got to the television and watched it. And again, very exciting, though. But I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I mean, they took them to overtime, but, OKC is a tough place to play in. And to be able to kind of beat them there and be down in the entire game is a little bit, I think it's like a soul-crushing kind of game here. I don't like to use the statement game as a term, but this is one of those things where, hey, listen, OKC, yeah, you're a good team, but I don't think they're going to be.
So let me understand this. Did you read this game as the Thunder lost or the Warriors won? Like, which sort of tipped the scales in the favor of the Warriors versus tipped the scales against the Thunder? Like, do you think that the Warriors had their destiny in their own hands and the Thunder didn't let it slip? Or was this a case of, from where you were standing, the Thunder did let one go, or the Warriors,
No, absolutely. I think the Thunder missed out on an opportunity to win this game. I mean, you have their second best player, Draymond Green, was 0 for 8. So, considering your second best player can't even hit a field goal that game, and you still lose in overtime, just shows again how dominant this Warriors team can be and will be. And somebody asked me a question earlier. Do you think that a Warriors Thunder Western Conference Final will go 6 games? I'm like, hell no, it's not going to go 6 games. It'll be quicker than that. I don't think that they match up rather well. I just don't think OKC has the defense to stop this Warrior team. That is their problem, is their defense, and it's just not going to be there.
How do you feel, though, watching this game? And Chris, I really, Gina, I'll have to hear you guys on this in just a second, but, if it wasn't for Curry getting, I guess, white hot from downtown and sort of bailing the Warriors out, and if it wasn't for like a ridiculous foul call at the end of regulation on Kevin Durant to send Iguodala to the line to give them a chance to go to overtime, this game could quite easily swing the other way. And the fact that, the Warriors kind of not so much got lucky, because obviously you execute and you obviously get multiple chances to do, get stops and perform in a clutch situation. But it felt like the Warriors in this particular instance really had every domino fall in their favor. And so I don't sort of look at this. Yeah, you mentioned soul crushing. It was definitely soul crushing for the Thunder. And then I'll get to sort of more about specifics of that in just a second. But, as far as the Warriors winning this convincingly, I wasn't convinced the Warriors are that much better than the Thunder. If we're going to see these teams meet again, I think both teams are going to have great film sessions on one another and figure out ways to sort of provide more. I mean, Chris, Gino, what did you guys see?
Well, you talk about, if Steph Curry doesn't get white hot, well, guess what? He does get white hot. He did during the game. He does often this season. That's part of his game. Was there that foul call at the end of regulation dubious? Yes. But, great teams get those calls, and other great teams they go up against have to power through that, and then they lost it in overtime. So I thought it was dubious. There's no question about that. But I'm also in the camp with Mo. And I say, I'm also in the camp with Mo saying this is not a situation where OKC says, hey, we can hang with them. No. This is, I don't know about soul crushing, but this is a really big shot to the solar plex. Really big shot to the solar plex. They really took a bad hit here.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Gino.
No, I was going to say that I didn't watch this game live. I just I read it. I read the results. I saw and then I watched it again before that, so I knew exactly what was going to happen. But I don't think the Warriors are just so dominant that they could be behind in the fourth quarter by a significant amount, and you'd still think that they can pull it off, no matter who they're facing. And OKC, and I felt it too. Like it's like, wow, I mean, I knew exactly what was going to happen, but I mean, the way that the game was unfolding, it's like you could totally see that they could still have a chance to not just win the game in regulation, but send it to overtime and eventually win there.
Well, here's the other thing too, I guess, is that, this game probably meant more to the Thunder than it did the Warriors. I mean, the Warriors' lead, I guess, in terms of the Western Conference is kind of cemented. But for the Thunder, they really wanted to sort of gain some ground, prove to the world that they had what it takes. I showed up to the arena extra early, got in extra workouts. That was extremely focused. It was a great mood from them pre-game in terms of they knew they were on the national stage. All the sort of broadcast, partners came into town and all that and all the rest of it, the circus that is the Warriors right now. And afterwards, I mean, Durant just sat at his chair and he was gutted. He wouldn't stand up to face the media. He wouldn't get out of his uniform. He basically just wanted to get his obligations and get the hell out of there because this team really took this loss hard. And they understand, the Thunder does, that they have other issues, at play, whether it's getting defensive stops, whether it's stepping out on Curry. But again, like, how do you defend a guy that's shooting the ball from, 37, 38 feet to win a game? I mean, they're really
Brad,
in
you don't.
history.
Brad, you
Right.
don't. And that's the thing. You don't.
Right. So should the Thunder be as gutted as they are? Should they just look at it as a freak occurrence? Or should they say, man, we really can't keep up with these guys?
No, I mean, they can keep up with them, but last night showed that who the superior team was, and it is a bad shot. But going into the game, they were the team that hyped themselves up more. It probably was more important for them, to the point where Russell Westbrook walked into the game wearing the Wood Harris jersey from above the rim, not the good guys jersey, the jersey of the bad guys. He wanted to go in there as one of the bad guys, the guy who's going to show he's better than Steph, that his team could take out the Warriors, and they couldn't do it because it was so important to them. I'm sure it was still important to the Warriors because every regular season game for them, they've shown how important it is, which I really respect from them because they want the record. But OKC made it much more important and couldn't get the job done. They're very talented, but wow, this was a big statement to show that the Warriors are the supreme team in this league.
Right, and they did it kind of with problems in this game. Again, I mentioned that Draymond was 0 for 8, but Draymond wasn't the only. I mean, it wasn't just the Draymond on the court. There was Draymond drama off the court in halftime. Brad, you were there, so maybe you can kind of elaborate a little bit more on this. Sure. But there was an issue between Draymond and Steve, Coach Kerr, right there in halftime, where they're yelling at each other, and you'd think, boy, this has makings of a loss right here. There's just no way. It's a long road trip. Golden State has been on the road every game since the All-Star break. And then you got a powerhouse team like OKC. They're supposed to lose a game like this, but you know what? Even if Draymond goes 0 for 8 and he's shouting at the coach, they're still winning.
Yep.
Right. It was a real interesting case here where the Thunder did really start out hot. They clearly showed up for this game. After getting spanked at home by the Cavs, they knew they had to prove a lot to sort of stay in that conversation for the contenders across this league. So they got off to a great start. Then over at halftime, Lisa Salters from ESPN overheard, the locker room drama that was going on. Post game, all the press, funnily enough, Draymond about this issue. Of course, he was kind of a little coy about it. He smiled a little bit. He kind of looked at, Ethan Strauss, I think it was from ESPN, who sort of first posed the question. And he basically said, look, man, we're a tight-knit group, and this is part of the season. This is going to happen from time to time. He says, am I a robot? No. Am I going to sort of have a complaint with the coach if I'm not getting what I want out there on the floor? Yeah, I'm going to say something, but that's the beauty of this team. We all actually have the platform to be able to speak our minds and share ideas, and we can all adjust on the fly. He says that, he's still going to go out there and do the dirty work and do whatever it takes to win. Does he care if he gets his shots? No, he doesn't. He's not out there to score the ball. So Draymond wasn't getting what he wanted. He didn't feel like either he was being involved in the plays enough, or something sort of wasn't right from him on a very personal level. But he adjusted and he stayed with it, and he was vital for them winning this game.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I think that's sort of a show of character that the Warriors have, and while it's a tale of two locker rooms, is because Warriors on one side sneak away with the win. Steph sits there and is sort of makes the media wait. And, plays this real sort of, kind little dance with everybody. And, he knows that the world's watching his every move. And so, Steph's in this case in a position where he knows he has all the power here. And then you go to the other locker room and it's so somber and they're so gutted and they just really don't want to have to face these questions. And so, even sort of 10, 15 minutes after all their obligations were over, KD and Russ and, Royal Ivey, who's an assistant coach and one of KD's friends, they're back out on the court. They're dissecting the game. They're still talking about it. This one stays with them. They can't let this go, at least not right away. But the Warriors, they were joking. They were, throwing around quotes and songs, and they were talking about, what was said on ESPN, and they had Sports Center playing, obviously in the locker room on the big screen. And, Steph was checking his phone. Clearly he was getting blasted and blasted in a good way in terms of like his phone was blowing up. Clearly everyone around the league and all his friends and family were telling him what a miraculous shot he made. So it was a case of Draymond may have had an issue with Kerr. Pre-game, Kerr said that, he let these guys go to, play golf and go to Disney World and ride Harry Potter rides and do all this sort of craziness after the win in Orlando. So Kerr gave them time off. They got to recharge the batteries. They come into Oklahoma City and they walk away with another win. And it's like, this is the story of the Warriors now.
Yeah.
And at the other end, right. It's just, it doesn't matter what they do anymore. They seem to always find a way, even if it is a ridiculous Steph Curry 3, or if it's a ridiculous call by the referees and Durant fouls out of that game because of that call. So again, who knows how that over time changes. And of course, what was most interesting to me, though, is Draymond turned around and said that they did a fantastic defensive job on KD. Now, Mo, I don't know if you got the box score in front of you, but last time I checked, KD kind of held his own against.
Sure. Maybe Draymond doesn't really know who's who. He probably meant Russell Westbrook, who was 10 for 29, and 0 for 6 from downtown, 7 turnovers. But KD had a yeah, no, I know. I'm kidding. KD had a fantastic game.
What I'm saying is,
no one came close to guarding him.
Right. And it's the way Draymond went about it. He was like, KD, yeah, man, look, he might have made some shots, but damn, we made it tough for him. You know what? He can't do that against us. He can't get what he wants against us.
They did not.
No, now I hear moral victory in your tone, but remember, Draymond was fantastic on defense. 6 steals, 4 blocks, 14 and 14 in the rebounds and assists, even though the points weren't there. Again, maybe he brought it up at the end. Like I find ways, if my shot's not falling, I'm going to find ways to contribute and get a win. And that's what they did.
But you know what? It's like I said earlier, that I didn't see this game live, and I watched it knowing what the result was going to be. But if you look at the body language of the Thunder in the fourth quarter, you kind of felt like the Warriors had their number. It's almost as if they knew what was going to happen. They knew what was capable of happening, and coming for the Warriors to be able to come back and send this game into overtime.
Here's what I would just say this to finalize, not only our coverage of that particular game, because it was one of the season's highlights, but just to sort of move into the next phase of the show. It really was a case where the Warriors had unpredictable play, but the Thunder had very predictable play. You knew Russ and KD were going to try to do it all, and they almost did. And so the Warriors won, maybe because they were a little bit more open to sort of improvisation, and maybe that's the lesson for the Thunder moving forward.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what the Thunder need to work on, because it clearly is at the end of the game they become mini James Hardens, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. You're not going to win games, especially in the playoffs, when you become that way. Yes, go. Timeout. 1 minute. Go.
Scrap that. Let's just look. Executive producers, delete that from the show. Let's move on to the second quarter.
All right, fair enough. Let's take a break. He doesn't want to hear his team hurt. We'll take a break. When we come back, we have quarter number 2. Don't go away. It's the Full Court Report.
Welcome to the initial episode of No Holds Barred with the Dean, Finito Henson. We ask the questions, you get the answers. Did you feel rough that you didn't get the best import award?
Our best import.
If you were the commissioner of the PBA for a day, what would be the first thing you do?
I'm not changing nothing.
Tell us, Leland, last November, when Samboy, your husband, suffered cardiac arrest, what was your feeling? How were you able to cope? And what kind of magnitude of expenses are you facing?
It's not good.
All right, welcome back to the Full Court Report. It is quarter number 2, my quarter, so I'm going to go ahead and put 12 minutes on the clock so I can kind of point guard this conversation. To jump off still this massive game the other night between the Thunder and the Warriors, the players, the other NBA players, Steph Curry's peers, they were all over social media kind of giving their 2 cents. I got quotes galore here in the next 12 minutes, so stick around, guys. And to lead it off, though, is some really powerful words from LeBron James. Now, obviously, LeBron has been the top player in the NBA for a few years, for quite some time now, more than a few years. And he said something that really struck me as a kind of very bold statement, and I don't know how we're going to dissect this, and that's what I want to dedicate a few minutes here to. He said, Steph Curry needs to stop it, man. He's ridiculous, man. Never before seen someone like him in the history of basketball. So, what is LeBron trying to say here? Is he throwing out a Jordan reference? Is he throwing out never seen someone like him, meaning what he does, but not necessarily the greatest player of all time? Where do you guys think LeBron is coming from with words like this, especially that last statement? Never seen before someone like him in the history of basketball. Is it, shots from 30 and above? Is it? What is he getting to?
Yeah, I think it's more of his type of style of play of what we've seen from this a point guard who can play this way, could shoot like this, shoot from his range, which no one has been able to shoot from this range before at a consistent level. The dribble, that type of level too. I mean, is he already the best jump shooter in the league, or in all time? Probably, maybe among the top 5 dribblers of all time. But this is also a weird season that we've heard Jason Kidd call Porzingis a player he's never seen before, the type of play. So I think it's more than that. And if LeBron already means the greatest of all time, either he's hating on Jordan because of his own legacy, or he's had one too many weird herbs go into his hair trying to protect his hairline. So I don't know. It can't mean the greatest. I think it's just his skill set.
Right. The point to him, is that it's not like LeBron's changing his number to number 30. Like, LeBron still knows the hierarchy. So LeBron's just saying that it's just amazing to be at a time and a place where a guy is doing, athletic feats or, shooting from range that we just hadn't seen before, and we hadn't predicted either. I mean, that's often what the case is here. It's like we're living through history, so no one is quite sure what to make of it. And I think as a student, LeBron's such a big student of the game. He knows the history so well, and he prides himself on that fact. It's just a case where he himself turns into a fan, which kind of makes it cool. It reminds you that these guys are human, and LeBron isn't all business, even though he tries to sort of posture himself as being Mr. Business. So, for him to say a comment like that, I think it's a credit to Steph. I don't think we should sort of take away from what the actual compliment means, but does it mean that Steph is a freak that's unlike LeBron or unlike Durant or unlike these guys who have actually sort of, bursted through and been sort of spearheads? I think the whole point to LeBron's comment is you can have a rack full of weapons. You don't have to just have one. And Steph's a new kind of weapon. So, let's embrace what it is.
He didn't, you're right. He didn't single out best, never seen before a shooter like this. He just said someone like this. Yeah, with all the, okay. But let's just jump then from LeBron to Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, clearly one of the greatest players of all time. He said something a lot more specific, and he said, Steph Curry has the chance to be the greatest player we've ever seen if he plays at this level for the next 4 to 5 years. How do you respond to a comment like that? Because now he's much more specific, not just great shooter, ball handler, whatever, greatest of all time.
Well, if we see him play at this level for a long time, for like 7, 8, 9 years.
No, he said 4 to 5 years, which is not that long.
In total, though, in total. So we've seen Curry do this for what, maybe 2 years now.
No. We have not seen Curry timeout. We have not seen Curry do this for 2 years.
We've seen him be a dominant player in the NBA for 2 years.
Yeah, he won the MVP last season.
But
he
hasn't been historic like this.
Not historic, but dominant. Not historic, but dominant. But if he's able to continue to do this.
This is historic. Right, okay, yeah, right.
Yes,
okay, go.
This is historic.
Yeah,
we're talking about
right now.
So if historic for 7 seasons.
Yeah.
5
so
seasons.
if we're going to see him improve this way for the next 4 or 5 years, then he should be in the conversation. Actually, maybe even before that. he's the way that he's dominating
Yeah,
this game.
Gino. Before that, try next week. No, of course not. Like the thing here
that's what social media mostly thinks. So Mo, did Magic Johnson say this, or did Magic Johnson tweet this?
But
wait, sorry. Did I? Yeah, I gotta correct myself. Magic Johnson tweeted this, and I know you have issues with Magic on Twitter.
No, I have no. I won't put any stock into this comment.
This is your guy, though, man. Yeah. All right. Anyway, continue. Sorry, Gino.
But the way, I mean, I have to agree with him in that sense, because I mean, I don't think we've seen anybody do what Steph Curry has done in the last 2 years. And if he's going to continue to I guess evolve and get shoot from the other side, from the other 3-point line to the basket,
Right.
So I mean, that's crazy stuff. But guess what? We never thought we'd see people pull up from the logo for jumpers.
Seriously.
So I mean, where does it end? Where does this Curry end? Like he's going to be pulling up from before half court by next season, and it's just ridiculous.
Obviously an exaggeration, but yeah,
So
I guess
we're doing this comparison. I guess we're going to do this comparison. That's fine. Steph Curry has the opportunity to become the greatest of all time based on his skill set. That's fine. There's no question about that of what we see. For the next 4 or 5 years, Magic Johnson is wrong. He's dead wrong. He needs a lot more time to do that than that, considering that Michael Jordan, I can't believe I'm doing this. Okay, so we're going to make quick comparisons. So Michael Jordan, 7-year prime, third season in the league where he scored 37 points, up to the year before he left for playing baseball, averaged 33 points a game. You want to say, okay, well, Steph, has played less minutes this year than Jordan did over this time. Okay, Steph has averaged 30 this year. Jordan 33. The points per minute is the same during that time. Jordan did for a 7-year stretch. That didn't even count his second three-peat when he came back. Curry has to do it a lot more times, for a lot more years, especially that his first 3-4 years in the league, he was averaging in the teens, and he's never averaged more than 24 points a game until this year. He has a while to go to catch MJ, and I'm not trying to say that to hate on him. That's just the reality of how the stats break down.
Sure, I can respect that. Again, but there are a lot of records that Steph is breaking this season, and it's exciting. Yeah, it's exciting.
It's historic.
Right, absolutely historic. He could and likely will be the first unanimous MVP winner ever. I mean, something that again Michael hasn't done either. But hey, you know what? It's to put him as best of all time. Yeah, maybe it'll take a little bit more than 4 to 5 years, as Magic has said. I get
the feeling though that Magic's going to put a disclaimer on there and say, yeah, he might be the best player, but he's not the best point guard. Like I've got a feeling that Magic still thinks of himself.
Magic Johnson's a great point guard. It was Magic Johnson tweeting. Don't worry about it. He's just not good at it.
You just all of that. You have to understand with the way Magic Johnson tweets. You have to take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
What do you mean a grain of salt? I need an ocean liner full of salt.
That's right. An interesting thing. I got to bring this up, and then we got to move. The gameplay director for NBA 2K 16 or the 2K series said that they're going to have to make some overhaul changes in the game because they're looking for ways to better translate Steph's game into the video game, because if you play the video game, you cannot do off-balance 3-point shots. You can't do kind of crossovers and 3-point shots because you're going to miss them. It doesn't matter who you are. But they have now completely said, well, we're going to have to overhaul some of these things because Steph is making
right?
Right, yeah. Steph's making those shots, and he's doing it at a 50% clip, which is kind of insane. Again, another little thing I wanted to throw out.
You're saying he's better than his video game.
Better than the freaking video game.
By far.
Sounds like Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was too.
Right. All right. But anyway, you guys, we were defending a little bit this crazy best player of all time thing, but Phil Jackson kind of came out with a tweet that was maybe this is the most ridiculous of defenses for Michael Jordan, if it was a defense at all. He said, you guys have never seen anything like Steph Curry. Well, let me remind you of Chris Jackson, also went by Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, who had a short but brilliant run in the NBA. Now, this is Phil, of course, so this is a massive personality saying, everybody relax. There are guys like this who come around every now and then, maybe for a small amount of time, that can run this league, like Chris Jackson, who, yes, was a great player, but come on, old man. Great player. He was a good player, but there's just no way you can compare these two, can you? Or is this a flat-out defense for Michael Jordan? Like, guys, relax, everybody.
Right, there's a lot of that. It seems to be like what Jackson's actually saying is, do not compare the greatest of all time to Steph Curry. It's too soon. It's not worth doing. And the point I think that Jackson really wants to hammer home is Curry's been historic for 1 year. Mike might have been historic for 5 or 7 or whatever it was that, you want, however, when you want to look at that at a different time with different rules in a different context, so I think this whole thing about is giving it perspective, not just, automatically jumping on this bandwagon and automatically saying things like, wow, we're seeing great things from Steph, therefore by default, he's the greatest because he's doing great things. And I think what he's saying is we've seen point guards who shoot before, we've seen super dynamic people before, and it's a case where basketball will not only have they seen it before, but we're going to continue to see it again. I mean, in 10 years' time, there could be a kid on a playground right now who's going to do things that Steph never even thought up, because that's the nature of the game. You build on the giants that come before you, and every generation gets a little better and a little smarter and a little trickier and all that stuff. So what we're seeing right now from Steph is completely historically relevant and important and all the rest of it. But it's not like we can just automatically...
Do you have a problem with saying Chris Jackson, though, as your
as
reference? Or maybe Allen Iverson might have been another one, or what?
Sure. Iverson's a better comparison in terms of popularity and in terms of skill and in terms of dominance and in terms of point production, all that. Yes, Jackson clearly overreached, but I think he overreached to send a message to say, you know what, comparisons are just that. They could be whatever you want them to be, and I'm not going to lose my head over this. I'll wait for Steph to do this for 5 straight years before I go ahead and make that comparison. So I think Phil Jackson's basically a little tongue-in-cheek saying, yeah, but we had a guy like Chris Jackson. I think you forget already. Like, that was only 20 years ago. So I think there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek.
But I think all these old timers always want to.
Yes, Chris.
Not give in.
This is where you're wrong.
Not give in to the current guys. I mean, whether you're Oscar, Isaiah Thomas, Phil Jackson, all these guys.
That's because of this. There's a simple reason and rationale behind that, and that is those guys had to earn it. They weren't given praise. They weren't given praise early on in their careers. They had to play a whole 10 years before anyone turned around and said, hey, man, maybe this guy is really, really good. We should give him some credit now and give him some love. So these guys only sort of got respect historically, after the fact, whereas what we're doing now with Steph is we're preemptively giving him all the praise, and I think that's what Oscar and these guys are trying to say. Now, Oscar's comment about defending Steph,
hater.
That was misguided.
Well, Steph did address it. He said he was a little bit annoyed at how some of these guys, these oldies, are kind of criticizing their team, their game, himself as well. I know that they poked a little bit of fun on it on Twitter as Andy Bogut has thrown out a couple tweets about some guys in Australia, his high school team being able to beat the Warriors or whatever it was. But so I think it's starting to rub a little bit, rub Steph the wrong way a little bit. But you know what? It's not going to derail their season. I think they're going to be as dominant as ever. It doesn't matter if these oldies don't think so. We got to take a break. When we come back, we will have our halftime segment here on the Full Court Report. Don't go away. Back after this.
A Sports5.ph original web show.
My name is Dominic Uy, and this is my buddy Kevin Limhoco.
We are going to be testing products to their nth degree, to their limits.
Cars.
How many car makers are not equipped with power steering?
Gadgets.
You feel the value of that watch.
And everything in between.
I don't like to pamper myself except in a restaurant.
This is the web show for the modern man.
Oh, let's go!
Nth degree. Catch it exclusively on Sports5.ph.
It's halftime on the Full Court Report, and right now we're going to move away from hardcore basketball talk, just in case someone loses an eye. So let's just make it more lighthearted and talk a little pop culture. Now, tonight is the Oscars, or tomorrow, or excuse me, Monday, depending on where you are. And we want to take time to speak about the best performance by an athlete in a movie. Now, we don't talk about basketball during halftime, so I want to eliminate the basketball players out of this one. I believe we already did basketball players in a movie anyway, but we're going to do non-basketball players in a movie because it is timely to the Oscars. And I'm going to throw it to our movie guy, our movie buff in Oklahoma City now, usually from Australia, and that's Brad Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm going to actually extend a conversation you and I happen to have in Toronto at All-Star Weekend, and that is the greatest white athlete of all time, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh,
and
he is an athlete, folks.
That's right. That's a great choice.
I'm going to mention Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall gave the performance of a lifetime, and man, I could rewatch that movie again and again and again. Arnie's got a whole catalog to pick from, but as far as best athlete goes, in a leading performance, man, I'm going with Arnie here, and I'm going to pick Total Recall as my favorite of his performances. because he
Oh,
plays
man, that's
two
a-
versions.
that-
He plays two versions of Arnie, and that always cracks me up.
Yeah,
is
no,
a
that's a
great
great
choice.
topic on its own. Like, what's the best
Yeah.
Arnold
Right.
performance? Because I
Right.
like
Yeah, that's
Commando.
right.
You know, Commando
I
was
mean,
my
my favorite
pick
is
growing up.
Last Action Hero. No, I'm just playing, but that's a great choice, Brad. That is a great,
Great choice. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, Gino, I'll kick it over to you. What do you got?
I was drawing blanks here a little bit, but I have to say somebody that I enjoyed on screen, maybe laughing more at him than with him, would be Iron Mike Tyson in the Hangover
Good choice.
movies. I mean, it was just awesome seeing him not take himself too seriously and just joke around about his character and who he's playing himself. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching him sing and dance and do all these crazy stuff on the big screen.
Yeah, and just doing it to the air drums, the power air drums to Phil Collins solo in the air tonight. That was unbelievable
awesome.
performance. And
Right.
you said
Whoever
he doesn't
knew
take
Mike had
himself
such
too
a good-
seriously. What was that?
I said, whoever thought Mike had such a good sense of humor and was happy to parody himself, Like, I thought
absolutely.
he might have been a sort of super serious customer, but then, yeah, great pick, Gino. I think that Chris will agree with that,
Yeah,
Tyson.
no, and Gino said, he doesn't take himself too seriously. Well, I mean, no one else does, so why shouldn't he? That's perfect. That's perfect. So,
Listen, Chris,
Mo,
you
what do
gotta
got?
you gotta go next because I feel like I'm gonna take your answer, and I'm not even that big fan of,
You're
of
gonna
the
take
series.
my answer?
I have a
No,
feeling
hang
I
on.
will because I know I can read your mind. I know where you're going. So you go first, and I'll pick. I'll sweep it up.
I have two. One's a cheat, but one is because the first one is he didn't have an accomplished sports career, but he did play for the Raiders, and it's the
There
man
you
who played
go.
Apollo Creed. The
That's
man
right,
who played
sure.
Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers. Who doesn't love Apollo Creed? Carl Weathers didn't have much of a football career for the Oakland Raiders, but he did play football, and he was,
Sure.
of course, everyone's lovable, at least lovable by three. Apollo Creed. So that's my first one. But the real one, someone who did have a career and is synonymous with the sport that he's part of in Major League Baseball, backup catcher, announcer for a lot of years, Bob Uecker,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
playing the announcer for the Cleveland Indians, and Major League One, obviously two also, but Major League One is where it came from. And he just had the funniest quips, funniest lines announcing those games. It just a bit outside for a ball 30 feet outside, stuff like that. Drinking Jack Daniels in the booth. Loved that performance. So, Mo, what do you got? What about you?
Man, it's tough because you said you can't play. The actor is not a basketball player because Ray Allen and Rick Fox were great and he got game. LeBron was fine in Trainwreck. I think I'm going to go Brett Favre in There's Something About Mary. I just thought, he was an awful actor, but I thought, him messing around with his name and his little cameo there was actually cool. And I thought There's Something About Mary was kind of it was a different kind of comedy when it came out in '98, man. It was aggressive, it was different, and man, it was kind of changed things for the disgusting, and everybody loved it. And I thought that was a great
Farrelly
film.
Brothers,
so,
man. That's Farrelly Brothers. Farrelly
Yeah.
Brothers at their best. That's what they did. They changed the way American audiences accepted comedy. It was real gross out
absolutely.
stuff.
So one of my favorite comedies, There's Something About Mary, and Brett Favre as favorite athlete in a movie.
It's funny you mentioned
All right.
Carl Weathers because Carl Weathers was also in one of Arnold's other best performances,
Terminator.
which is Predator.
Oh,
Predator.
Predator.
Predator,
Terminator.
yeah.
Predator.
To the editor, there goes a Predator. That's right.
And
Yeah.
I remember
They
his
teamed up, man. That's where they had the epic arm wrestle. And of course he said, "What's the matter, Dylan? Pushing in too many pencils?"
And remember when his arm fell off, the gun was still shooting.
Right,
When
right.
they blew his arm off, yeah.
And
Oh,
really
man, that sounds
quickly,
like a-
my favorite movie with three top-notch athletes is Conan the Barbarian, Wilt Chamberlain, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Andre the Giant. You can't beat those three as a tandem. Imagine trying to get in a bar fight with those three during filming. Oh boy!
Oh man, I should have went with Andre the Giant and Princess Bride. Anyway, we got to get out of
Anybody
here.
want a peanut?
Yeah, we got a second half coming up here. It's the Full Court Report. Don't go away. More of a
Sorry.
Welcome to the initial episode of No Holds Barred with the Dean, Finito Henson. We ask the questions, you get the answers. Did you feel rough that you didn't get the best import award?
I was best import.
If you were the commissioner of the PBA for a day, what would be the first thing you'd do?
I'm not changing nothing.
Tell us, Leland, last November, when Samboy, your husband, suffered cardiac arrest, what was your feeling? How were you able to cope? And what kind of magnitude of expenses are you facing?
It's not good.
right, welcome back to the Full Court Report. It is our second half now. We're going to go to Manila, Philippines, and get Gino Rufino to lead the next 12 minutes. Gino, you got time on the clock. Where are you going with this one?
Thanks, Mo. I want to use this time to talk about two teams in the Eastern Conference. I'm talking about the two top teams in the Eastern Conference, the Toronto Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Right now, Toronto is 2 games behind Cleveland in the standings, and both teams lost today. How about that? I thought the Raptors were going to be able to take this, so I was going to get the half game closer. But anyway, so Raptors minus Kyle Lowry lost to the much improved Detroit Pistons. Cavs minus LBJ lost to the Washington Wizards. Now, after the Cavs lost to the Raptors yesterday, LBJ said they lacked mental toughness. After the loss to the Wizards, J.R. Smith, I guess he's the next guy in command. Just kidding. J.R. Smith said his level of concern is extremely high. Now, the degree of difficulty, if you look at the remaining schedule of these two teams for the regular season, I think they kind of even out, but maybe it favors the Cavs just a little bit, only because the Raptors still have to face, I believe, OKC and San Antonio. So those two teams are going to be giving the Raptors a little bit of problems. However, if you look at Cleveland, they're going to be going up against teams that are battling for playoff spots. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure exactly which side is better. Which side I would rather be in if I was talking about the Cavs and the Raptors' remaining schedules. So I just want to put it out there. It's possible mathematically for the Raptors to catch Cleveland and get the number 1 spot in the Eastern Conference. Now I want to ask you guys if you think that they're actually going to be able to do it, especially considering.
I think they will.
Yeah,
I think they're going to do it, and that doesn't mean I think they're going to beat the Cavs in the playoffs, because I don't believe that. I think they're going to do it here in the regular season. Now, during this run of LeBron James finals appearances, whether it's with the Heat or the Cavs, he hasn't always been the first seed for various reasons, but he's been the second seed a couple times. This is one of those years where the Raptors have been playing with such grit, such heart, been hot at times, and the Cavs have had issues. They're going to be, they've had concerns with injuries, of course, too, especially with Kyrie. LeBron's going to need a little rest, too, down the stretch. It depends on how much he wants to push it, but I don't think they're going to let him push it all the way through. And now they have a new coach. I think the Raptors, I'm just going to put it out there, I think the Raptors are going to have the higher seed than them. They're going to be the number 1 seed in the East when the playoffs start.
Okay. Brad?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's going to be good for the NBA, and I think it's good for the Cavs. I think a little bit of motivation at this point in the season is healthy. I think we saw that when LeBron first went to Miami. Chicago had the better record. They got to the conference finals. They got spanked. Miami, through LeBron and Wade, showed up. I think Kyrie, Love, and obviously King James, need motivation sometimes. I think when they've got it, I think they're at their best. I think that there's a point to prove. I think they like going into a series with teams discounting them. For them, I'm not even sure if home court advantage is going to matter that much, at least against the East. And so this is a case where I think if the Raptors get them, which they very likely could, I think it's good for basketball. I mean, it's good for the Raptors in terms of getting that Eastern Conference locked up. If the Raptors can somehow get to 58 wins and set a franchise record, that would be awesome as well. It's been a great year for the guys in, Kyle Lowry, the superstar, and obviously, DeMar DeRozan and everyone else that they've got. And I think, it's a credit for what they're building up there in Toronto. And I think it's nice to see the East have a challenger. I think that if we're going to sort of talk about this being a foregone conclusion, I'm going to get a little bored and I'm going to switch off and I'm going to talk only about the West. So at least this keeps me interested and engaged.
Right.
It's a case where I want to see an arm wrestle. I don't want to get to the conference finals and see a team just blowing out another team, or, like the Cavs being sort of gifted a sort of, spot in the finals. I think everyone who gets to the finals should earn that place. Yeah. And this is Cavaliers' best chance to show the world that, hey, you know what, you might not think that we're as amazing as we think we are, but we're going to show you again when push comes to shove.
Well, if the standings stay the way, if the standing stays the same the way they are right now, I think it's better for basketball if Cleveland is the number 1 seed. They'll take on the Bulls in the first round. Then the second round, they have a shot at the Miami Heat, and then they go on the Raptors. That's a great kind of road to the finals for the Cavaliers. I think that they're going to hold court here. I have no doubts that the Raptors are going to finish second and the Cavs are going to finish first. I think it will serve as a little bit of motivation, but to think about giving up home court advantage to the Raptors in Canada in the playoffs is not something I think that the Cavs are going to take lightly. So they'll push for it. They'll come out as the number one team. It's good for their psyche as well, especially with a bunch of egos on that team to come out as the number one. So they're going to go for it. I don't see the Raptors taking over.
To Gino's point at the beginning of the quarter, we're talking about this in context of there's nothing wrong with Cleveland, but clearly Cleveland themselves have some concerns internally and some issues now with managing minutes and doing everything else in terms of chemistry and whatever have you. So I think that the Raptors at this point, and this is why I think Chris and I and Gino may sort of agree on this and be sort of the counter to you in terms of intuition, is that the Raptors seem to be a more cohesive unit, and that's what gives them the favor, at least in the regular season.
They could be cohesive, and that's fine. But, listen, when it comes to how much talent you have on this team, even a dysfunctional Cavaliers team, because they're so loaded, are still going to be able to hold off a Raptors team that has less talent and maybe a little bit more chemistry. They are still in first place, guys, and they're still up by 2 games.
Right. They're in the driver's seat. They're in the driver's seat.
Sure.
No one's doubting that. No one's doubting the driver's seat.
That's the mouth. So, as Magic Johnson would say, they're number one because they have a better record than the Raptors. So yeah, we agree with that. There's no question about
but I mean,
that. What are we talking about here?
with Tyrone Lue as their head coach, I mean, obviously
Assistant coach. Sorry, assistant coach.
Assistant coach.
Get that right. Get that right.
He's not exactly. He doesn't have, I guess, the experience some of the other coaches have had in the Eastern Conference or in the Western Conference. And then you hear stuff like like LBJ and J.R. Smith talking about things in back-to-back losses at that. So I mean, this is during the time.
Didn't they recently lose to the Raptors? Isn't this why we're talking about this? Because they lose to them.
That's when LBJ voiced out his opinion. But
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I mean, I was under the impression that after the All-Star break, we're gonna see the Cleveland Cavaliers go on a run. I didn't think it was going to go the other direction. I thought we were going to see them win maybe 20 games in a row. But I guess we're kind of far from that, and that's why I brought this up, because I was like, well, I didn't think the Raptors would be this good at this point in the season as well. So I mean, So I mean, that's my concern here. If you're a Cavs fan.
Well, going into this year, we all thought this would be the Bulls. The Bulls had challenged. We all thought there'd be another team in the East that would rise to the top, And so what we've seen now is the Raptors somehow figured it out. Larry's clearly turned into something more than we ever thought he could be. Credit to him for all the work that he's put in, for the weight that he's lost, and for all the production that we're seeing on the floor. And the Cavs, feel the Raptors at their heels now, and they've got to now use that as motivation to sort of somehow lock up this number one seed. Because if they don't, there may be sort of bigger repercussions, and whatever we're seeing sort of in the locker room may fracture more on the court. But as long as LeBron's healthy, as long as Kyrie's healthy, and as long as Kevin Love is there and motivated and engaged, the Raptors just don't have the talent to beat them in a 7-game series. That's why I don't think the Cavs necessarily care as much about having the number one seeded, for the East, because they just want to get back to the finals.
Yeah, Mo, there's a long history in the NBA of the best team in the particular conference not being the number one seed. It doesn't mean that they're going to lose in the playoffs. It's a long history of that, and it would be no different if that happened this year.
All right, let's move along. I want to talk about some acquisitions after the trade deadline here in the NBA. The 6th highest paid player in the association takes his 11.8 points, 3.9 rebounds, and 4.1 assists this season to South Beach. Former All-Star Joe Johnson agreed to a buyout with the Nets and signed with the Heat. The other teams that were included in his list are the Cavs and the Atlanta Hawks, where he spent some time with as well.
Sure.
Was this the right move for Joe Johnson and for the Heat to sign him?
It's the right move for the Heat. I mean, if Chris Bosh can't produce, and if Chris Bosh has got health issues, they need someone to sort of help give them a little something to help, maintain that playoff positioning. Chris and I talked about a little bit this, earlier today. If Luol Deng moves to the 4, if Joe Johnson plays the 3, if they go a little small, Whiteside's still protecting the rim. I mean, this team could still actually be interesting to watch and maybe even a little fun. But Joe Johnson seems to be dead bait no matter where he is. So I don't know if this is just a layover before he actually goes somewhere else, or if this is part of Miami's plans, because I don't imagine they want to rebuild around an aging, falling apart Joe Johnson at that price. And so, of course, he agreed to a buyout. Who wouldn't agree to a buyout with that much money? But what I don't quite understand, Pat Riley's a super smart guy, and why Pat Riley would kind of like bring him in unless he wants to be a super sub. But maybe there's sort of more problems in Miami in terms of health than we realize. And Joe Johnson is the only insurance policy they could find.
Yeah, I mean, they started him today, and he played, I guess, somewhat okay for
somewhat okay. That's not reassuring, man.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. But I mean, I see it as a sort of like a Band-Aid solution. Like they don't know what's going to happen with Chris Bosh, and they need some help, but they need some firepower a little bit, and so they picked up somebody who they thought that they could help a little bit.
I'm so glad though. He looked. If he'd gone to the Spurs, we would have seen Joe Johnson put up 20 a night somehow, and he would have sort of resurrected his career. Like that's what scares me is when a guy like this gets bought out. I just worry that he's going to end up with a team that's going to somehow maximize his, and bring him back like a Renaissance man and help him find that fountain of youth. But I'm so glad it's Miami where we don't have to worry about him and he can just toil away on the beach and, move on. Like, we're done.
What do we
Miami,
expect from him? You said someone okay. What do we expect of him? I think that's apt. I know he makes a lot, but I think that's apt if you get someone okay, considering all the different pieces that he have. I don't think we expect any more, and he needs to know that role at this point of his career, and they can have a nice little run here as a team.
And Brad, you mentioned the San Antonio Spurs. I want to point out here, I know that we're running out of time here in the quarter, but the Spurs picked up and, they got older. I mean, we always say that the Spurs are getting old every single year, right? I mean, they got older because they got one of the oldest guys in the league, and Andre Miller, who was bought out as well by the Minnesota Timberwolves. And for me, I know he's averaging only 3.4 points and 2.2 assists and 10 minutes a game this season for the Wolves. They didn't need him in Minnesota. There's a youth movement over there that's pretty exciting if you're watching, if you're paying attention.
Guy. He was not a playing guy. He wasn't getting minutes. I mean, Zach LaVine and obviously Rubio, although their point guards up there. But him going to San Antonio now seems like it's a good fit. San Antonio still has to have a third point guard, which they don't have.
Yeah.
And I guess he's a perfect Pop guy. And who knows, maybe Andre's looking for an assistant coach's job after this year, and Pop's system seems to be where he wants to be. And good for him. I mean, I think he's done enough for this league to sort of warrant, chasing a ring or whatever the case may be with him buying out and relocating there. But, good for Andre Miller. I think, what do they nickname him? The Professor or something? What is he? Yeah, I mean,
it can't hurt. This is an acquisition that definitely can't hurt the team, and it could only bring good things. Even if he doesn't play, it can bring great things for the Spurs. So absolutely,
locker room guy, strong personality, and just he's a cool guy to have around. And again, Patty Mills, my fellow countryman, needs this kind of tutelage. You need somebody else because the only thing Tony Parker can teach him is how to cheat on someone's wife. So I don't really want to necessarily,
Oh, Chris, is that you? Look at that. That's a little Chris joke right there.
Derek Fisher going on tour this year, baby.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have our fourth quarter. You're listening to the Full Court Report. Back after this. Don't go away.
A Sports5.ph original web show.
My name is Dominic Uy, and this is my buddy Kevin Limhoco.
We are going to be testing products to their nth degree, to their limits.
Cars.
How many car makers are not equipped with power steering?
Gadgets.
You feel the value of that watch.
And everything in between.
I don't like to pamper myself except in a restaurant.
This is the web show for the modern man.
Oh, let's go!
Nth degree. Catch it exclusively on Sports5.ph.
All right, back on the Full Court Report. It is fourth quarter time, and let's go to New York City, talk to Chris Savage. Chris, you got 12 minutes, and where are you taking this quarter?
So, we talk a lot about Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook. Hey, the whole world knows what they're all about, especially after last night's game. But do you know that the Clippers have this superstar point guard? His name is Chris Paul, and he's been in the league for a long time as a superstar. Now, I know he's not at the level of what Steph and Westbrook are playing this year, but boy, is he still having another sensational season in his Hall of Fame career, and especially with Blake Griffin out recently. They're 10-4 in the last 14 games, the Clippers are. That's a pretty strong run here to remain in the fourth position in the Western Conference Finals. And the three teams ahead of them, two are super teams, historically great, and one are the Thunder, who we saw, have all these weapons as of last night and all the way through the last month. So the Clippers are hanging tough. Chris Paul is leading the way with them, without Blake Griffin, with a transition at the trade deadline, with all that stuff going on, having to deal with Austin Rivers on the team, that type of stuff. He has, in the last 14 games, averaged 23, 24 points a game, 10 assists as normal, full season, almost 20 points a game, 9 assists per game. So here's a guy we forget about, obviously for some of the reason that
Right.
their superstars playing and getting the attention ahead of them, but also like to the point where we forget about them because hey, you're yesterday's news. The Clippers had their little run in the last couple of years. You were Lob City. We fell in love with you, but we shouldn't. This guy has a chance to continue to have a historic career, we know, but really bring the Clippers to a good playoff run this year. So I just want to get your thoughts on Chris Paul and what the Clippers can do behind him, especially when Blake comes back. I know they might be shut down by the top teams, but let's still hear about that. I'm going to start with you because you always question Chris Paul and what he can do.
I think the reason why people have forgotten about Chris Paul is just because he hasn't won, and that's kind of that's the reputation, and when you build that kind of reputation, people are going to forget about you. Yeah, he's having an excellent season, man. A season that definitely keeps him in the conversation with Steph and Westbrook in terms of elite point guards in the NBA. But if you're not winning anything and you're not maximizing your opportunity with the talent that you have on the team these past few years, people are going to forget about you. I'm sorry.
I think it runs a lot deeper than that now, solely because we take Chris Paul for granted, for one.
Yes.
We think he's going to keep this up. I think it's unfair on Chris Paul that we're so critical of him. It's not Chris Paul's fault that Steph Curry showed up and ruined the party by shooting triples from 40 feet, because Chris Paul is essentially like Kobe was. It's the end of an era. It's the end of the classic point guard who passes first, who sets up teammates, who essentially play like Isaiah Thomas did, which is get everyone involved and then take over in the fourth. That's what Chris Paul's career was all about. He's the last of those kind of dinosaurs. And unless Chris Paul starts sort of gunning from everywhere, now Westbrook and maybe Damian Lillard are sort of that next other wave, which is, either a combination of the shooters and the finishers or just a pure finisher and beast like Westbrook is. So I think we're just seeing a changing of style of point guard. And Chris Paul gets taken for granted. We've been critical on him. Now he's putting up the numbers. And Chris, I'm glad you said it. Hey, I'm not going to get laughed at anymore when I said a couple of weeks back that, CP3 should be at least in the conversation for MVP because he is carrying this team to a record that's quite respectable, and he's maintaining sort of the ship while everything around him is falling down. Guys are getting punched in the face, coaches making weird trades at the deadline and, making acquisitions from a GM standpoint. So for the fact that Chris Paul is still producing at an elite level, it goes to his credit. It's the reason why he's an all-star. There's a reason why LeBron keeps him in his inner circle. And I have every belief in the world that Chris Paul will again return to the national team at the Olympics because I think they need a sure-handed point guard that sets everyone else up. And I think that's going to be his legacy. And if he doesn't win in the playoffs, whatever, man. So diatribe over. I'm throwing it to someone else. Screw you guys. Chris Paul is cool.
So what can this team do in the playoffs? This is one of those years he might be getting off the hook because of the teams that he will have to face, the Clippers would have to face. So is this a year where if he doesn't get to the Western Conference Finals, he's just going to get pounded more? Or this is a year where, hey, you get off the hook? It's just one of those years where two teams
I think expectations got to be low, I think, for the Clippers to do well in the playoffs. I mean, sure, they'll get through whoever they're going to face in the first round, but after that, boy, what are you going to do? Golden State, Spurs, Thunder. I mean, come on. So I think expectations are low, which is maybe good for Chris Paul. Give him a little bit of a break from all the scrutiny and criticism and hate that comes his way when he loses.
I think when the Clippers, though, I mean, if the higher the expectations for this team, the worse they do. So I mean, if there are no expectations for the Clippers, that's when they thrive the most. So I mean, who knows? Maybe just maybe, if they enter the playoffs as the number 4 seed, which they probably. Where they are right now,
likely will, right?
And they'll face a team, one of the bottom teams. They should be able to get out of the first round. And who knows if what happens in the second round. Remember what happened last year when they faced the Spurs in the first round, and they had that miracle shot by who? By Chris Paul.
Chris Paul is one of his playoff moments.
Yeah.
Chris Paul takes his matchups with these guys personally. I think you see it in his face. I think you see it in his aggression. I think you see everything that Chris Paul does against Steph. He really, really doesn't like being discredited. He doesn't like being considered the third best point guard after being the number 1 for so many years. And so he goes into these matchups trying to win them on a personal level, and he tries to help his team get over the line. I think the problem is that Steph and Russ have more help around them, and that's where Chris is at a fault here, is that CP3 can't, just match these guys individually and then also, incorporate his team. So, he's kind of between a rock and a hard place right now, and that's unfortunately where he falls. So he's damned if you do and damned if he doesn't, and, he'll try his hardest, but I just don't think the Clippers support cast is at the, caliber of everybody else out west with the Thunder and whatever. So, just as a case of, look, I think we have to give him a pass this year just because he can't control what the other teams do. He can only control what his team does. And I think in the circumstances, he's done a remarkable job given everything that's happening around him.
Right. The flip side is that ship has sailed for him possibly if the Warriors continue turning it into a dynasty. That he had his shot.
What do you do?
And it could be over
That's
now.
it.
And
That's
the
it.
legacy
Exactly.
is not to the level it could be.
Exactly. He'll get remembered along those other group of point guards through history that wasn't quite able to get their team a title. As great as they were, playmakers don't win titles and all that sort of stuff. So, it's just one of those things that he's going to have to battle the history books and battle his, contemporaries. And that's just the state of Chris Paul. But, he has all the respect in the world from his peers, and everyone knows that he's still a fearsome player, and, he fights to the death. And, whether or not he's sort of niggly and John Stockton-esque with his sort of, cheap plays, whatever, the guy's still capable of carrying a team, and he's still deadly in the fourth. I mean, he's still a closer when he needs to be. He's not he's slower than he used to be, but I still think he's nifty, and I still think he still has DeAndre there for when he needs him. And Clippers are dangerous; they're just not deadly.
Right, and he's still the best flopper in the game. So, guys, I want to shift over to another topic, and that's Mark Cuban has recently spoken out about the three-point line, which is a big discussion because of what Steph has done, and just the evolution of the game in general over the last couple of years of the three-pointer being much more of a factor in the NBA, that we're seeing guys shooting in a 5-year stretch more three-pointers than Larry Bird did in their whole career, or even a 2-year stretch. Mark Cuban wants to push the three-point line back. 23, 9, and 22 on the corners is not enough for him anymore. He wants to push it back, and because of the types of three-pointers that we're seeing, the ridiculousness of it, and how many different guys and their skill sets can hit three-pointers. So I just want to throw it out there quickly, guys. What do you think about pushing the three-point line back? Would it work? Would it be worse? Tell me.
I want to ask, is he kind of proposing this because he's sick and tired of seeing the Warriors kick his team's butt, or the Warriors destroy everybody? Or is he tired of seeing... Or is he tired of seeing big men take 3-point shots, which we've seen a lot of? Like, again, DeMarcus Cousins, since the start of January, is shooting 45% from three. DeMarcus Cousins, 45%, that's great for a guy like that. And, of course, it's kind of like a drug. You get addicted to that kind of stuff. You see other guys start doing it. Does he want to pull that back so the game doesn't get ruined? Or is this just kind of some kind of jealousy thing where he's seeing Golden State, rip on them?
Or Mo, another question, would he be saying it if Dirk Nowitzki was still in his prime? There's another one for you.
Well, maybe he is. No, listen, Dirk Nowitzki, while a great 3-point shooter, was probably one of the best mid-range shooters of all time. So maybe pulling that 3-point line out is just kind of just to say, hey, listen, let's not forget about that mid-range jumper.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that could be it too. I think Mark Cuban wouldn't just put it out there just based on the Warriors kicking his. But for me, it could be the big man part of it always has bothered me. I said it on the show before. They are now grooming big men to be able to hit 3-pointers. Now, some people love that as part of the game. I don't. I think big men should be groomed in the big man way, and you still should have a skill set that way. I think if you push it out, that might entice the game, might enhance the game better that way, as long as it keeps big men from shooting as many threes. So I think it actually helps the game in that regard. It could hurt the game in that guys don't have the skill set of taking those mid-range jumpers, the analytics, it gets in guys' heads, and they don't know where to shoot the ball from that little cusp right there, or it's out of their range. And next thing you know, they mess up.
We've seen leagues around the world, and specifically referencing Europe here, and I know it's an NBA sort of centric show, but in this case, what happens when you have big men who shoot threes, it turns into Euro ball. Everyone's shooting threes, everyone's looking for sort of that outside shot, and that's a style of basketball that might be fine for them, but I don't think it's the best way to use the talent that America has. I don't think it's the best way, for these kids coming up, these super athletes. You know what? I would much rather see point guards get crafty and find lanes to throw alley-oops to these big men and get surefire twos than I would want to see sort of DeAndre step out and develop a 3-point shot. I wasn't happy when guys like Serge Ibaka started shooting threes. I don't like DeMarcus shooting threes. Dirk's the exception to the rule. Dirk's not the standard, and everyone should wake up and realize that, you can't just replicate these guys, and just because you want them to shoot threes doesn't mean they have the mechanics to do it in their bodies or the coordination, or it doesn't necessarily mean that they were groomed and grow up that way. So if everyone's going outwards, I say you buck the trend and go inwards. Like, it's one of those things that's why the Warriors were able to exploit the way that they have been able to, is because everyone was thinking one way and then they zigzagged the other. So, it's a case of, doing things in patches is fine, but doing things over the course of a season, man, that's where it becomes sort of, nauseating for me anyway. I like a little bit of tradition Big men, free to roam, but man, don't be specialists out there.
This Cuban saying this too also speaks to the impact of Steph Curry. Let's not overlook that. I mean, this is he's at the level now where Shaquille O'Neal, they want to make rules change because of Shaq. This is at that level right now.
You know what it is? You know what it is? I think it's worse than that. I think it's when Kareem was so dominant that they banned dunking in college because they didn't want him to do this. So Steph shooting threes. Steph shooting threes is like, oh well, we have to move it back now because Steph can make them from 40 feet. Well, the truth is, it's not like everybody can do what Steph does. If the entire NBA was doing what Steph does, then sure, address the rule. But it's like the NBA's got such bigger problems. They're moving the court, wider and longer and, changing up all these sort of dimensions. It's like, hang on, play good D, recruit good guys, draft good players, have good coaches. None of this is an issue.
Get better refs.
Yeah, and get better referees who understand the game and call the actual rules. I mean, that's what we need to see happen, not change the line. It's just the marking on the court. It don't mean nothing.
Well, we're talking about it, which is huge. And again, it speaks to the impact of Steph, showing, again, the historical level of what he's playing at. And I'm fine when players can change the conversation. Will that happen or not? Probably not. But I have always have enjoyed when conversations come up because of a unique player skill set. So we'll see.
Hey, the NBA moved it in. They made a mistake when they moved it in. They'll make a mistake if they move it out. Just let the three-point line be what it is.
I agree with Brad.
That is it for tonight. We have no overtime segment. We will wrap it up here for the Full Court Report. Let's just go around the room briefly and plug our social media accounts or any kind of last words you want to say. Gino, I'll start with you in Manila. What do you got?
You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. It's JINNORUFINO.
And Brad in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say thanks to Sarah who let me record this episode and one of my previous episodes in her lounge room. You can follow her on
Sarah.
Twitter at
nice job. Thank you.
RANOLA. And a huge thank to both Christy Price and Alex White for putting up with me while I've been in Oklahoma City. Nice. They've been awesome hosts, and I'm glad they put up with my madness. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at @BackpackBaller. I'm going to keep posting pics. I got some crazy Jeff Van Gundy pics to put up there, so look out for those. But yeah, thanks, Mo. Over to you, Chris.
Sure. It's at Not Bill Walton, and I know there's some Twitter feeds out there that are Steph Curry or Russell Westbrook-esque. Well, I'm more of a Chris Paul, steady, and I get the job done. You know how it is.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DJ Mo Twister. We'll see you again on Wednesday night, U.S. time, Thursday over there in the Philippines and Australia and anywhere else in Asia, actually. And we'll see you then. Have a great night. Thanks for listening to our show. Don't forget Full Court Report also on Twitter. Bye, guys.